Hi, welcome to another week of the Farm to Table virtual series. As always, I will get you guys started with some general information, and Eileen will follow up with you guys the next week with a fun, easy recipe that you guys can do at home. So this week's topic is beef. So just to get us started, I wanted to kind of introduce you guys to a few terms about cattle. So a bull is an intact, non-castrated male. A steer is a castrated male. A heifer is a female that has not born a calf, and a cow is a female that has had a calf. I also wanted to talk about the stomach of cows. So cows are known as ruminants, which means they have one stomach with 4 different compartments. So the first compartment is the rumen. So aside from storage, the rumen is also a fermentation vat. The rumen's environment favors the growth of microbes. These microbes digest or ferment feed within the rumen and make VFAs. The rumen absorbs most of the VFAs from fermentation. The next compartment is the reticulum. The reticulum is a pouch-like structure in the forward area of the body close to the heart. The tissues in the reticulum form a network similar to a honeycomb. Heavy or dense feed and metal objects eaten by the cow drop into this compartment. So if you've ever heard of something like hardware disease, which comes from cows eating accidentally like nails or screws and other metal-like things, this is what that compartment is for, and that's where they drop into. Next, we have the omasum. The omasum is a globe-shaped structure containing leaves of tissue. It absorbs water and other substances from digestive contents. And lastly, we have the abomasum. The abomasum is the only compartment lined with glands. These glands release hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes needed to break down feeds. So this is technically the true stomach. So there are a lot of breeds of cattle. So you have your dairy breeds and then you have your beef breeds. So here are just a couple of the beef breeds, but the most common beef breed would be this one right here in the front, which is our Angus. So the Angus, like I said, is the most common breed of beef cattle. This breed came from northeastern Scotland and was first brought to the U.S. by a Kansas rancher in 1873. The meat from the Angus is typically very flavorful, tender, and has really good marbling. So here are just some of the basics of raising beef cattle. So this is just the very top tip of the iceberg. Okay, so certain materials that you're gonna need are feeders, waters, pasture, equipment, and shelter. So your cattle need to have access to feed and water at all times, whether it's spring, summer, fall, winter. They need to be able to access that, especially in the summer when it's very hot. They need to be able to get to a water source, and the same for in winter when it's very, very cold. They still need to be able to get that. So you have to be cautious of freezing pipelines. Pasture, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, cows like to graze. Equipment, so this could be from your tractors and your pullers just to kind of carry around feed, hay, equipment just for basic care of the land, or even when it comes to medical attention for the cows. And shelter, you always need to have some sort of covering or barn. So again, in the summer, they need to be able to find shade, and some sort of like overhead shelter is great for that. And again, just having a barn, especially like in winter, still let your cows out, but a place that you can keep them in, especially if it looks like there's going to be a big snowstorm if you live in the north. Things to think about before getting beef cattle are what kind of operation do you want to have? So there are a couple different types. Some of the typical options are cow-calf, backgrounding feeder calves, or feedlot. The cow-calf producer keeps a herd of cows to produce calves. The backgrounder buys the weaned calves and turns them out onto pastures until they reach about 800 to 900 pounds. And the feedlot operator purchases weaned calves or backgrounded calves and feeds them to the market weight, which is when they would be sent off to the butcher. Or you could just have a small home operation. So something that you just you have some land and you just want a couple of head of beef cow for your own consumption, or maybe even for your neighbors, like nothing too big or on a large scale like the ones I just mentioned. Nutrition. So beef cattle will have varying requirements depending on their age and stage of production. Calves will need a higher level of nutrition to allow for their growth, while mature dry cows will need relatively low level of nutrition. Pregnant cows in the last third of pregnancy will require more nutrients than the dry cows. Feed requirements also increase for cold weather and especially for cold rains. Breeding. Breeding seasons will vary on when you want your calves born. Many producers will breed cows to calf in the spring so that they can take advantage of the flush growth of spring grass. Other producers may breed cows to calf in the fall for the same reason. Many producers will also use AI, so artificial insemination, to breed their cows. This practice allows them to have the very high quality bulls that they may not be able to afford and keep on the land themselves. And then selling. Two of the easiest places to sell your calves are through your local auction barn or through a local feeder calf sale. This is always a gamble because you never know what you will receive for your calves. Sometimes that gamble can work in your favor as well as against you. It just depends. So when taking your calves to the market, look for those times of the year when demand is high and you will more than likely receive higher prices. So for example, early fall and early spring are good times to typically sell your calves. And then I just wanted to end with a few fun facts about the beef industry. So Texas is the leading state of beef production. When you see cattle and they're chewing, it seems like they're doing this all day, right? So they can chew their cud, which is regurgitated, partially digested food, for up to 8 hours every day. When buying beef, it comes in 3 main grades. So that's prime, which is the best. Next is choice, and then select. Hamburger meat from one steer could equal 720 quarter-pound hamburgers, enough for a family of 4 to enjoy hamburgers every day for nearly 6 months. And the total of beef production in the U.S. was estimated to reach 27.48 billion pounds in 2019, up from 26.15 billion pounds in the previous year. So here are the resources and the sites that I used for the information in my PowerPoint. Again, this was just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot to unpack with the beef and the dairy industry and with cattle themselves. So I could go on for an hour or two just kind of diving into the beef or dairy industry, going into more terms, diving in more on how to raise them, the different types of operation, and going into parasites and diseases. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is down at the bottom, kls342@cornell.edu. And of course, stay tuned for Eileen's video next week, where she has a fun recipe, very easy and delicious that you guys can do at home. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good weekend.